Smash Bros. Is a quarter of a century old, and something that often comes with aging is pessimistic or even nihilistic nostalgia. All the new media sucks, the younger generations are lazy and disrespectful, the world was better when I was in my prime. Or in the world of Smash Bros., we see this present itself in the form of still actively campaigning for platformer mascot characters to be added to the roster. Oh, that might be too mean. But hey, I'd pop off if they added Spyro. Since literally the first Smash game, people have been doing whatever they can to let the dev team know what new characters they want added. And amazingly, the dev team has been incredibly responsive. Once a character becomes clearly desired by a decent plurality, more often than not, they get in eventually. But we all know it's not a 100% hit rate, and I think that Smash has finally been around for long enough that it's worth entertaining the question, when is it time to give up? Is it ever time to give up on thinking a character could ever get into Smash Bros? Now, of course, enjoy your Smash however you want. If you really want a character, shout it to the heavens, let it be known, just remain civil about it. But just for fun, I ran the numbers that could provide some insights on what kinds of characters Smash typically adds with respect to the concepts of age and time. And some of the results I found were shockingly eye-opening to me. Some of these numbers genuinely showed me information I never realized before and changed how I look at what characters are likely to be included.
Brian, look at me. You still have your youth. Don't waste it.
Like I said, Smash has been around for a while at this point. For this video, we're going to be specifically analyzing the inclusions made in Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. For one, games before that still mostly seemed to be catching up with adding basic Nintendo icons. Even up to Brawl, we were still adding Diddy Kong, Wario, and the Kanto starters. But also, I think more modern Smash games are a better indicator of how new modern Smash games might be thinking. Older Smash games didn't have to contend with the concept of time and outdated characters nearly as much. Think about it this way, 20 years before Brawl came out was the NES era, but 20 years before a new Smash game, if it came out today, would be the Nintendo Wii era. We're not too far away from Brawl itself being 20 years old. Smash is officially a multi-generational franchise, so how is it going to deal with that reality when it comes to character selection? For this video, I decided to break characters into 3 categories. Modern characters who were created less than 10 years before they were playable in Smash, old characters who were created 10 to 20 years before they were playable in Smash, and classic characters who were created 20 plus years before they were playable in Smash. And even with this simple measurement, I instantly saw something weird. Of the 26 first-party characters that were added in Smash 4 and Ultimate, 17 of them, or 65% of them, were modern characters. These included the likes of Rosalina, Shulk, Incineroar, and Min Min. Only 7 first-party characters qualified as classic, and only 2 qualified as old, Villager and Bowser Jr., debuting in 2001 and 2002 respectively, before first being playable in Smash in 2014. So while Smash definitely makes room for some classic Nintendo icons, it is clear that newer members of the Nintendo family have had favor over the last decade. However, when we look at the 16 third-party characters added in Smash 4 and Ultimate, we see the complete opposite. 11 of the third-party characters, that's 69%, fall into the category of classic, with only 2 qualifying as old at the time of the Smash playability, Steve and Sora, and only 3 qualifying as modern. However, those 3 modern third-party characters include Bayonetta, Joker, and, because I'm going off the default costume and not considering alt costumes, Hero technically qualifies as a modern third-party inclusion, even though we all know that character pick was classic at heart, which would bring us up to 75% of the third-party characters having debuted over 20 years before being added to Smash. This difference is stark. Nintendo characters have largely been new, guest characters have largely been old, but at the same time, this completely makes sense. We already discussed how the older Smash games did a lot of the heavy lifting as far as including Nintendo's classic icons, so it makes sense that Smash would now get to focus on some more modern choices. Not to mention, Nintendo is probably very happy to advertise their latest creations in one of the biggest video games of all time. Contrasting that are the third parties. Smash didn't even include non-Nintendo characters until Brawl, which only had 2. Smash 4 and Ultimate have kind of been playing catch-up with third third-party characters, getting as many of the most requested fighters in as possible, which rightfully tend to be huge, popular gaming icons that have been around for a while to build up a large, diverse fan base. But that only makes me even more curious to look at the outliers and figure out how they got into Smash despite going against such clear trends. And the answer is actually pretty easy to see. Only 2 first-party characters were in the old category. They were Villager and Bowser Jr. Both hail from some of Nintendo's largest series and were practically guaranteed to continue being relevant in Nintendo's library for, well, ever. Then we had 2 old third parties, Steve and Sora, who were simply overwhelmingly popular choices. And finally, our only 2 modern third parties, at least after discounting the inclusion of Erdrick, except oops, Square will only let us have Erdrick if we disguise him as an ad for their latest game. First up was Bayonetta, who was also technically an overwhelmingly popular character choice, at least as far as Nintendo has publicly told us. She was the reported ballot pick for Smash 4, the most requested character fans asked to see in Smash 4 out of all realizable options, at least as far as Nintendo says. If you notice the overt hesitancy in my tone, that is because we have a lot of good evidence to suggest that Bayonetta was going to be added to the game anyway, regardless of her performance in the ballot. But even if Bayonetta wasn't selected due to overwhelming popularity like Steve and Sora, I still think her inclusion is deserving of being one of our extremely rare modern third-party picks. She was added during the Wii U era, one of Nintendo's darkest periods for third-party development partners, when it felt like no one wanted to work with Nintendo on their failing console. Bayonetta 2 was a shining light in this darkness, a huge success relative to the Wii U, from a close development partner that reviewed incredibly well. Bayonetta 2 could be called the only massive third-party AAA win the Wii U ever got. No wonder they wanted to celebrate that accomplishment and nurture that precious partnership with a Smash inclusion. The final of the outliers we have to discuss is the one that's the hardest to explain, therefore to me the most fun to talk about. Why did the Smash team choose Joker, who was firmly a PlayStation icon who hadn't even touched a Nintendo platform at the time of his reveal, at which point the character was barely even 2 years old? Joker remains arguably the most shocking and unexpected reveal in the history of Smash Bros., especially when paired up with an excellent Game Awards trailer that plays into the idea that no one would ever expect this person to be in Smash Bros. As the data in this segment shows, Joker really is the kind of character who doesn't get into this game unless you have massive fan backing, which Joker didn't because most people assumed he had no shot. Now, despite that, Persona 5 the game was obviously incredibly successful. Persona 5 launched to acclaim, went on to become the best reviewed turn-based JRPG of all time with its re-release, and has sold definitely at least 7 million units to date, but that's a conservative estimate, the real number is likely over 8 million by now. To give you an idea of how rare Persona 5's success was for a Japanese game, I can show you every single Japanese game that reviewed and sold at least as well as Persona 5 since that game was released on your screen at the same time. If we exclude Nintendo games, literally only Elden Ring has pulled it off since 2016. If we mix things up a bit and instead use Persona 5 Royal's more impressive score of 95 and look at all non-Nintendo Japanese games throughout all of history, only Elden Ring, Tekken 3, and the original Resident Evil 4 can match it. Why bring this up? Yes, it's impressive. Yes, my obsession with stats and data is both extremely cool and irresistibly attractive. But did Nintendo really add Joker to Smash just because his game was really good? Actually, kinda. We have shockingly little detail from Sakurai on why Joker was selected, something he's normally not so shy about. The best we have comes from a brand manager at Atlus who revealed that Sakurai was the one who began talks about having Joker in Smash because he just personally really liked Persona 5. If only we could all dictate Smash inclusions through such pure reasoning. So, our takeaways so far. If you want to get into Smash, number 1, be a new Nintendo character. Number 2, be a classic non-Nintendo character. Number 3, be overwhelmingly popular or prominent. And number 4, don't be so new that you aren't a classic yet, but don't be so old that you also aren't the hot new thing anymore. Seriously, of the 42 characters added in Smash 4 and Ultimate, only 4 of them fell into the old category of characters who were between 10 and 20 years old. That is insane to me.
Whenever there's a crisis, I'm either running away or standing on the sidelines. You're always rescuing me when all I do is follow you around.
Time isn't just about age. The other factor you have to consider is relevancy. Characters from a series with no future are rarely chosen. That is a direct quote from Sakurai himself, and he's right. I went over all 42 characters added in Smash 4 and Ultimate to see how many of them have had a major game appearance within the last 5 years at the time they became playable in Smash Bros. Note that I counted any appearance the character themselves made in a video game within the last 5 years, including remakes and re-releases or just cameo appearances. Pretty much the only things that I didn't count were appearances in Smash games, like as assist trophies or collectibles, and minor or indirect appearances inside of games, such as appearing in unlockable concept art or on like a poster in the background or something. But if the character themselves appeared in the game, it counts as an appearance, it counts towards their relevancy. Out of all 42 characters, only 5 of them qualified as irrelevant. That's just 12% of all characters added in Smash 4 and Ultimate. The vast majority of Smash inclusions came from characters who in some way, shape, or form had appeared in a video game in the last 5 years leading up to their inclusion. But what about the 5 characters who made the cut despite this shortcoming? The 5 characters were Duck Hunt, because I chose not to include the Wii U re-release of his game that coincided with his Smash inclusion. Simon and Richter, although Simon was almost relevant as his appearance in Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate was just barely outside the 5-year window I decided on. And finally, Dark Samus and King K. Rool, who hadn't appeared in a title since before 2010. Let's knock them down one by one. For a while there, Smash had a history of adding icons from the NES, their first console. This seems to have gone away in recent years, and Duck Hunt was kind of the last one who seems to have been added in the spirit of this tradition. Though, as for Sakurai's word on it, he said that Duck Hunt was added because the game was a big deal and the character was interesting. Simon could also be considered an NES icon choice, and most fans agreed he was the correct next legacy Nintendo third-party choice after Mega Man. And like I said, he was less irrelevant than the other irrelevant characters we're talking about here. Richter was brought in clearly as a tack onto Simon, not added by his own merit, but for what it's worth, he is present in the most celebrated Castlevania game of all time. Dark Samus and King K. Rool were both added due to overwhelming fan demand from the Smash ballot. That's pretty much the only reason. So for now, what are the takeaways on the specific subject of relevancy? Well, number 1, be relevant. Like, seriously, this is like the single most important data point we're talking about today. But number 2, if you're not relevant, hope to the good Lord people like you enough to push hard for you anyway. Only the top tier fan demanded characters seem to get over the hurdle of being irrelevant. And the last takeaway I can give you, number 3, just hope that I'm wrong and Smash actually isn't done pulling in classic Nintendo icons. But, I mean, Duck Hunt was added to Smash over a decade ago. It really seems like they're done to me.
Jeez, my baby brother's better than you.
You don't say. Yeah, I guess I'm a little out of
Hey,
practice.
don't go.
Now that we've spent some time talking about time, it's time to apply our findings about time to the timely characters Smash fans are hoping to see added to the game next time. Basically, we're going to rapid fire through the most wanted Smash characters today and see if they have the qualities of a character who could likely be added from the perspective of their age and relevancy. And if they don't quite measure up, maybe it would be reasonable to believe that their moment to get added to Smash Bros. Has simply passed. Just for fun, we'll tally up everyone we talk about just to see where we land by the end. You ready? Now, right off the bat, clearly we've seen in this video that the ultimate trump card that can get you past any time-related hurdles you have is being one of the single most desired characters in all of Smash speculation. Waluigi and Bandana Waddle Dee are far from modern Nintendo characters, but they're relevant and more importantly, everyone wants them. They're safe. In the same category, and the only other ultra-popular character I'm going to call out here is Geno, who I do think is popular enough to be safe no matter what, but even if he wasn't, his report card is flawless, technically a third party, definitely classic, and now finally relevant. But since we started off so strong with those 3, let's get into some first parties who might not make it. Isaac from Golden Sun is actually a classic character at this point, that surprised me to find out, but definitely irrelevant, since it seems like they might be done pulling classic Nintendo characters who haven't been up to much else recently, the likes of Excitebiker, Sukapan, Sakamaru. their time might have passed. And perhaps the character with the worst report card of them all, any character from Rhythm Heaven. Sadly landing in the two worst categories you do not want to end up in this video, being both old and irrelevant.
I believe the morning sun always gonna shine again.
But of course, there are plenty of first parties who do fit the mold. Pauline may be more of a classic pick, but her relevance is definitely a product of the modern age of Nintendo, and feels like she fits right in on that Bowser Jr. level of she's probably gonna be relevant for a long time to come. Similarly, Sylux from Metroid might end up having his moment in the spotlight at the perfect time to be added in Smash. And of course, I gotta mention, it's hard to find a character more of a slam dunk for the next Smash game than Octoling. But let's scoot over to third parties for a minute, because there's something I want to talk about. 2B is my pick for the most likely third party to fill in the Joker slot. The big deal modern third party that Smash goes for. Despite her game getting up there in age, she will not go away. She was added to Grand Blue literally earlier this year. Her game reviewed just a few points worse than Persona 5, but it sold a couple million better. And 2B the character has of course been a very popular Smash pick for a while, an instant icon for Square and Platinum, so she is perhaps the only modern third party I'm willing to give the green light to. We'll see how the rest of this video plays out. Now of course, since I mentioned it in the Joker segment, I should mention the Tarnished, the main character from Elden Ring. The reason I go for 2B over Tarnished is because 2B as a character is simply more popular and more desired. I don't think the success of Elden Ring will be enough to override the fact that I just don't see anyone asking for this character. I see a lot more people talk about Chosen Undead, who unfortunately is both old and irrelevant, so not passing the test either. The other two games I mentioned in that Persona segment were Tekken 3, Kazuya's already in Smash, although ironically not in Tekken 3, but I think he gets the job done just the same, and Resident Evil 4. And yeah, Leon S. Kennedy, incredibly popular character, third-party classic, and relevant to this day. Slide him into the green section. Let's talk about some other slam dunk third parties. So many of the most popular choices for third parties in Smash remain classic characters who have stayed relevant. Crash Bandicoot, perfect, Phoenix Wright, flawless, and has that deep Nintendo history that probably gave Bayonetta an edge. Demi-Fiend, of course. Ryu Hayabusa, not only a third-party classic who has remained relevant, but an NES icon? You could not ask for a better report card in this video. But now I'm being too positive. Let's slide into some more dubious third parties. To contrast Demi-Fiend, Nahobino is not on the side of the third-party age spectrum that you want to be on, and, sorry to poke what is a sore spot for a lot of people, did not do what Joker was able to do. Travis Touchdown has slid into the dreaded old category of character age, so I think his chances aren't as strong as they used to be. Although on the subject of old, in an interesting category, Shovel Knight, arguably the front-runner indie character, is also old, although I wonder if the scale has to change when talking about indie characters, because the indie gaming scene hasn't been prevalent for as long as the main gaming scene we usually talk about. Shovel Knight kind of feels like a classic compared to a lot of the other indie picks people talk about. And if you're not one of the people who thinks Shovel Knight is the front-runner indie character, then you likely think that Sans is, who is in the exact same boat as Shovel Knight. It's an interesting point, I don't want to give it too much time in this video, but yeah, I don't really know where I want to place these guys. Split them in half, point to each side. Indies are only becoming a bigger and bigger topic in the Smash world. Some other popular choices include the Knight, who actually surprisingly falls into the irrelevant category as of right now. A character you won't usually see me talking positively about, but I can't deny that Shantae has a pretty perfect report card for a third-party character, so she's in the clear. Then you got a series of newer indie characters like Madeline and Zagreus. Not quite the indie gaming classics that Shovel Knight and Sans are, neither of them surpass the Joker standard, but for indie characters, the fact that they get as close to that standard as they do is, I think, worthy of consideration. Split them in half. Lastly, I want to talk about what is going to consistently be one of my favorite categories of characters to discuss for a while, and that is newer characters brought into the Smash speculation scene who weren't really talked about as much in the Ultimate era. There's always going to be some slam dunk newer Nintendo characters in the running. This time we have Noah and Mio. Perfect selection, slide them into the green. Ravenbeak and Emmy have gotten a surprising amount of love to me, and they are first party and modern, so I'm not going to discount them entirely, although they do bring up a point that I haven't really gotten to touch on in this video, which is, yes, they're modern, yes, they're relevant, but pretty soon, Xylux is going to be even more relevant. So can I give these characters a perfect grade when, by the metric of time, there might be another character in the exact same series who outclasses them? But like I said, I don't want to discount them entirely, split them in half. Back in the day, it seemed like everyone was on the Tails train, then Sephiroth came out and made Dr. Eggman the clear choice. But in the current era, from what I'm seeing, it seems like Shadow the Hedgehog has become the clear frontrunner for the next Sonic character. And he's got the report card to back it up, no complaints with him. He might have been the natural next choice for a fighting game protagonist anyway, but especially after the lucrative few years he's had, you're going to be seeing Soul Bad Guy a lot more for this game. And he is old enough to be considered a classic. Perfect report card, welcome to the big leagues. A newer prominent figure who doesn't have a perfect report card is Kiryu. Actually, by the end of the year, Kiryu will qualify as a classic character, but for another 6 months or so, he's gonna be stuck in the old category, and for that, can't give him the pass. And while we're on the subject, Ichiban not doing any better. A modern third party who definitely can't be argued to be on Joker's level. But RGG Studios isn't completely out of luck. With the revival of Virtua Fighter, bringing Akira back into relevance, giving him a perfect report card, and if we're being honest with ourselves, he is a Sakurai as heck character anyway. Easy pick for the green. So in the end, of the characters I arbitrarily decided to talk about, the green characters who passed the test of this video did end up beating out the red characters. And I'll be honest, if I kept going, I think green's lead would only grow. Which means I can't help but want to ask the question, does this mean that Smash tends to include characters who match the trends outlined in this video? Or is it that the Smash fans tend to ask for characters who fit that mold, and then Smash just adds who it sees the people want? The truth is probably a little bit of column A and column B, but more importantly, that is just not the question I sought out to answer in this video. But hope you had fun anyway.